Hey guys, welcome. This is Ralph. I'm here. We're going to talk about MLB Run Differential. So we're going to use Tableau today to visualize that data set that I got, the data set that I got recently from the Baseball Cube online. And I wanted to work with that data set because, as you can tell, I'm a Rangers fan. So I love baseball and I like everything about sport, the different statistics from a data mind person like myself. So much data you can get lost in. So I wanted to specifically look at the MLB Run Differential today. We're going to look at the data set that I got online. We're also going to join that with a few data sets in Tableau, which you see on the screen right here. And we're also going to play around with the data, make a real simple dashboard, maybe play around with some MLB logo shapes, and then do one or two dashboard actions, and then we'll go through some calculations and create just a simple dashboard. Take a look at the visualization we built and see if we can identify some anomalies out of the data and dig more into that. But primarily this is going to be just to um, understand what the statistic means, what the data is, how to visualize it, how to use Tableau to kind of plot it out there over a given period of time, over a season, over multiple seasons. So hopefully you all will get some tips out of this in Tableau, some tips on how to manipulate data, some tips on how to, just strategize how you want to visualize things. So let's go ahead and go to our Tableau screen. I have it open on Tableau Public right now. If you don't have a Tableau Public account, please create one today. Create one today. It's a good opportunity for you to create an account and have basically a sandbox so you can start visualizing stuff on your own and put stuff out on your public profile. So I will go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and bring in a text file, which is the main data set that I got online. Okay, so as that's pulling up, um, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about MLB Run Differential. So I'm going to go back to this is the MLB.com site, and as you can see, it's a team's run differential is determined by subtracting the total number of runs, both earned and unearned, and that they've allowed from the number of runs they've scored. So obviously, if you're the home team and you win 8-2, your run differential from that game is 6. And as you go on through a whole season, you add up all those incremental differentials. And obviously, if you have a more positive run differential, then that's a good indicator from a cumulative aspect throughout the season of how talented your team is compared to other teams. They can go different directions. If you have a poor team, then you may dive into the negative numbers and run differential cumulative totals. Okay, back to Tableau. You see, we got our data set here. Let's take a look at it real quick. Um, let's see. Loading data for first time. Load data for preview. Okay, so check it out. We have game data here by every game date. So this is why I purposely got this data set online. I wanted to get differentials for each team, for each season, and for each game. So it's gonna once we make our calculations, it's gonna be perfect for us to plot it on a line chart just to see how a specific team's run differential total either dips or rises throughout the season, and then how it is compared to its other cohorts within its league. There's two leagues in the MLB, or its division, three divisions within each league. Okay, so first things first, I see that the year is a numeric format. I'm going to change that real quick to string because I'm going to use that as a dimension to plot. If I need to use it in a continuous form, I can change that later in the visual. Let's see. Okay, cool. And then first things first, let's look at the data. So one thing I already see is team ID. So the team ID here is specific to each team and by year. So let's plot really quick um, each year on the columns. We see we have data going back to 1957. And then I want to put team ID under rows. And notice all these ABCs. That's basically just saying that Tableau's reading your data and there is values for that year specific to that team ID. So let's look at it from its at descending, just to kind of get a feel for what teams we're working with here. Okay, so first things first, I noticed that there are some blanks. And if you're not a baseball fan like I am, basically what that means is there's a team ID for a team here that is no longer active in these years. So in 2023, there was a team with an ID of BRO, no longer active. So if I highlight that and go all the way back, I want to see where there's data. 1957 is the only year it registered any specific activity. So that's peculiar. But if I can look at that and say, hey, was there any team IDs that started collecting activity or data in the following year, in 1958? Yeah, so immediately I see LAN right there, 1958. So I'm assuming, just from because I like the sport, BRO is referring to the Brooklyn Dodgers prior to their move to Los Angeles, which is now identified as LAN, Los Angeles N for National League. So you can already see that their team IDs are specific to the name of their team at the time that the activity was being registered in that time. So you can see there's a lot of values here that are blank. So it's kind of dirty. It's not really clean to visualize just yet. So I kind of want to clean it up a bit. You can clean it up in different places. You can do it in Excel on your own manually. You can do it in Alteryx if you're familiar with that, Tableau Prep, or you can even do it off, in SQL and on a code environment if you're well versed in that. It's not too many values, not too many teams that are blank. So I think I just gonna work with it. I'm just gonna work with it manually, and I'm gonna show you the data set that I've already created for that. So let me bring in that data set just to show you what it looks like. Okay. So notice that the things that are specific to the data set already in Tableau is team key. So you can see team key here is going to be the thing that we're going to join this data set off of. There's going to be a value. There's always going to be a match because each team key is going to revert to active team ID. So let's go back to our example that we looked at in Tableau to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now I have it mapped to LAN, and I also have it mapped to BRO. So then what this does is once I join it, I can actually visualize and bring in the team element here into the actual marks or into the actual visualization, and it'll basically group up the data into one complete kind of cohort. So that's what we want here, and I think it makes it cleaner. It makes all the data kind of streamlined together, so we can see how a specific team is done throughout season by season, barring any moves or any relocations. But I also like that I'm going to bring in the team name here. It's a lot cleaner rather than just showing LAN. Okay, so I'm going to exit this right here. And another thing, just to get a feel for, is kind of understanding the data set itself. So let's look at the data. I'm going to use the view data option here. It's going to pop up a window. Okay. So we have away record, division, game date, home record, league, any streak. So at that given day when the game concluded, was there a streak, a win streak, or a losing streak? Team ID, the year of the season, attendance. I believe uh, this looks like total attendance by year. I doubt that 2 million people showed up to watch Philadelphia play on August 28th, 2007. And then division rank. So at the end of that game, that date, what was your current rank within the division? Games back, the leader. So we measure how many games are you back from the current leader at that time in your division. Let's see, league rank. So it kind of looks at all the teams within its respective league, national or American, and what the rank is. Losses at that time, MLB rank for the whole league, the whole two leagues together, and then I believe that's a playoff indicator. Runs against, runs for, and wins at that time. So these two right here, runs against and runs for, we're definitely going to want to use that. That's basically what we're going to need to calculate the run differential at that given time when the game concludes. One thing we're also going to use too is game date. So the game date, as you know, usually the season is from April to October, but not every team plays on every specific date in the schedule. Just that there's days off, there's travel days. So what I want to do is I want to utilize the game date for its specific season and convert that to a game number. Uh, I need that for various reasons. One, it makes the visualization cleaner. If you don't have any teams that were playing on a specific date, then the visualization kind of lags. You'll see, you know, plateaus or even breaks. But if I convert everything back to a game number, then what happens is it brings everything back to an even playing field, and then you can see the run differential statistic cleanly against other teams. So we'll definitely be using the game date there to create a calculated field, and then I like the division rank here. The one thing I want to do with this is there are some few limitations to the statistic. MLB run differential. If you have a very high differential, that is a indicator of how talented your team is. However, it does not necessarily mean that if you have the highest run differential, you're going to make the playoffs or you're going to win the World Series, right? So I want to be able to see how many teams that ended first in the division at the end of the season, and what were their run differentials or what were the differentials at that time. Then at that point, I identify teams and say, all right, if I'm looking at the Chicago White Sox, and I'll only look at run differentials going back to 1957, and only look at the seasons where they ended in first, then you can kind of see the different run differentials. Did they stay positive? Were there some that were negative? There was a division crappy as a whole, or did they not make the playoffs? You know, it's good to have extra data on top of that. So we're going to join that as well and create a calculation to identify those basically the run differential at the end of the season. And then the one thing I want to see too is I want to be able to look at the World Series champs. So each World Series champs from 1957 to 2022, I want to be able to call those out individually and see what were all those run differentials. You know, what were similar at that time for all those World Series champs? Were there any outliers and whatnot? And we'll go a little bit more in depth into that. So there's two data sets that I want to join to this main base data set you're looking at here. That's going to be the team ID mapping so that we can map everything together so that we can see LAN in one complete line populated, and then the Brooklyn will be grouped up with that at the very end since we only have data from 1957. Okay, and then the other data set I'll be matching is a mapping for all World Series champs going back to 1957. So let's go back to the data studio pane, whatever, and I am going to, let's see. Okay, so now I want to add a data set. Let's add the World Series one. So notice that when I add it, it's automatically gonna join it and give a relational join here. And what I want to join it on here is team ID, team key, and that should be it. That's going to be just a straight join. Get the team ID from the activity data set, and then join it with the value in the World Series champ data set. Actually, let's see. Did I mess up? Maybe. Okay. Move that really quick. This. Yeah. All right, so now we have team ID matching up with team key. And basically what we're doing here is we're creating additional elements or columns to the main data set here, which is the activity. I also want to bring in the World Series champs here, but in this case, I want to create what's called a left join, not just a straight relationship join, because if I do another relationship join to this right here, what's going to happen is it's probably going to find team ID joins everywhere. But I want it to be specific to the year that they won. So obviously, if the Rangers they haven't won the World Series at all. So what happens is I want to see null captures because there's going to be no match for the data set here. So let me bring in that World Series champ here. And what I'll do here is I'll double click here. That'll open up this little window pane here. I'll bring in that sheet 1 here and drop it there. It's going to ask us what type of join we want. We'll do a left join because I want to keep all the activity here and only bring in all the rest of the data here. So if there's joins, there'll be a value. If there isn't a join, it'll just say null. I want to do a join off of team ID, team key, and I want to do one more join off the year of the specific World Series. So I'll do a year there. Remember, we changed that to a string. So right here, I'm going to create a join calculation just to make sure that let's bring that in. Okay, World Series year. I hit OK. No errors. All right, so now we have a left join here with the World Series indicator of the flag, and then we have a team key there. Okay. Now let's look at the data. If I go back to that sheet I created, I want you guys to take a look at this. So notice this, right? But now, let's say that I want to bring in the team element from the team mapping. Look at that. There's the Dodgers example, Brooklyn and LAN. If I take off that team ID, we got a real clean data set to work with. Everything's been vetted. Hey guys, so let's go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and start to build the calculations. The first thing I want to work with is the game number. So I want to create a calculation here, and I want to base it on the game date. So let's call this game number, and we're going to do what's called a date difference calculation. So it's looking at one date and then calculating the difference in intervals from that specific date. From here, we'll do it by days, just to get a number of how many days going forward. So let's start with activating that function, date diff. The interval will be day. And then we're going to do a fixed LOD calculation. I want to look at it from the level of every year. And then getting the minimum game date. So what that will do is that's going to get the minimum specific date for every year. I'll do -1 here because I want it to actually literally count from, basically count from 0, so I want a value for 1. And then look at it by game date. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. So what it's doing is, let me break this up. This is all one calculation here, but then we have a calculation embedded in the date diff calculation. Okay. So I will hit apply on this, but I want to show you really quick an example. So let's bring in the year, and we'll bring in the game date, exact date, make it a discrete dimension. Okay, so you see the dates for 1957. There's April 15, 16, 17, 18. It skips 19, 20, 21. Okay, now if I bring in the game number, make that a discrete just to show you how it looks. So now it's more of a clean representation. Game 1, Game 2, Game 3, Game 4. So specific to each team, it'll have those games listed into its respective game numbers. Let's break up real quick because I feel I want to kind of bury the point of this calculation. So I'm going to bring the calculation in again. I only want to look at the calculation inside the date diff calculation. So I'm going to copy that. If I bring that calculation in here, exact date, so remember this calculation 1 is the calculation inside the date diff calculation. But I want to show you what that looks like so then you can kind of bury the point in on the complete calculation how the date diff calc works. And as soon as my computer finishes thinking, we will go over that. Okay. So notice how I took the min of each year. So it looks like what it did was okay. Remember I took the min and then I subtracted it by 1. I did that because I didn't want to see any zeros. There's no game 0. So obviously without the -1, this would have been 415. But it would have been 0 basically as game number. I don't want that. I want game 1. So I went back 1 day. And then all it does is a calculation. This minus this, this minus this. And that's it. That's your game number. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, drop me a comment and we can go offline and talk about that more. Alright, let me remove that. No need for the calculation 1 anymore. I'm going to delete that. Okay. So I also want to create some other calculations. Let's calculate World Series champ. So what we're going to do is create a calculation here off of the data set that we had joined on the World Series champ by year. I'll call this World Series champ question mark. And what that'll do is just identify all the nulls. Let me see. Where should I start first? Here we go. Alright, so what we'll do is an if statement. If I want to identify the nulls. So let's identify the nulls by year and for each team ID. So let's do is null So for each year, each team ID, I want to look at the max instances based off the World Series team key. Close that. That. If the max is null, then I want to say no. Else, yes. So real quick, what that's doing, it's looking at the partition of each year, each team ID, and it's looking for the max of that element, the World Series team key. Remember, we're doing a left join, so if there wasn't a match, it's going to say null. So by that partition, what is the max number of values that come across? It's null. So if we use the is null function, we're going to get a true, right? So the max is null. That's true, and there is no function. Then we're going to identify an indicator and call it N for no. They weren't the World Series champ. There wasn't a match. However, if that value, if there is a match, if it is not null, you'll see the team ID. So it doesn't match what the max was. It's a false. So then you'll get a Y indicator for yes. Okay, so we've created that one. Now, let's do the season end division rank. I want to know which team. Let's see if I can do season end division rank. I know I'm going to be using the division rank. What do you call that? The division rank data element, but I just want to look at it at the end of every year. So, create calculated field. We'll call this season end division rank. And what we're going to have to do is basically have a if statement that says, hey, let me go ahead and go to each year and each team partition and go to that max game number. So the max game number to its respective team for its respective season. If that max game number equals the game number in the data set, then I want to see that division rank. And I want that to be basically static for all values I use within that respective year and team. Okay, so we will do a fixed calculation. We'll do it by year, by team, and we'll do a max calc. This is where we'll put the if statement in there. Sometimes those brackets don't show up. I don't like that. Okay. Max game number equals game number, then division rank, else 0 end. And we'll close it off. Okay, so let's kind of relook at this. Let's start with the if statement. If we go to the level, the partition using the LOD calculation, at the year level, at the team level, you want to identify the max game number. So let's say, for instance, a certain team, a certain year played 164 games. So then it'll be static at 164. And then it says if 164 at that partition is equal to the game number. So now we're reverting back to the original data set, going back to the 164 observation for that team, for that year. Does that match? Yes. 164 equals 164. What is the division rank at that time? So now basically saying if there's a match, what's the division rank? Then I embed that into another partition calculation, an LOD calculation, level of detail, at the year, at the team, and give me the max number. So at that time, since I created a zero for the else, there's going to be nobody that's ranked zero. You're either going to be ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I get the max, you're going to have a bunch of zeros and then a number, what that rank was at that time at the end of the season. So then what it basically says is the rank for that team for every observation. So it basically adds a number for every observation in that year, that team, which is basically the rank at the end of the year. Okay. Now, I believe there's one more calculation we need to create. Totally forgot. Yeah, that's our run differential. How we're going to plot it. So let me go to our calculation pane here. And if I go to run differential calculation, I want to call this run differential. And basically I want to do just a simple calculation of runs for, runs against. That's it. Simple. So now we kind of have all the necessary elements to create the observation that we want. So first things first, I'm going to clear this page. I'll leave that there. Okay. I'm going to plot the runs differential here under rows. I want that to be a line. Right now it's one point. Now I'm going to add game number here. Let's right click that, add it here. Let's see if I do just that game number. There we go. Look at that. We're close, but it's looking good. It's looking at the game number based the run differential for the whole data set. Okay. Now I want to bring in detail here to kind of separate all this. So I want to bring in team name under detail. Uh-oh, look at that, guys. I want to bring in... Actually, this is probably going to be grouping. This should be okay, I think. Let me see. Bring in the year. Where's the year? Come on, Ralph, you didn't lose it. All right, there it is. Year. Okay. Look at that. Wow. How cool is that? That's every year, every team. Okay. Now I also want to... I'm going to left control click this and add an element to color. Add this to color as well. Look at that, guys. Beautiful. Alright. I'm going to play around with the size a bit. I don't like the lines being too large. But if I make them really small, you can start to see some depth on all the other teams. Wow. How cool is that? Let it finish thinking. Okay, cool. Alright, so a few other things. Let's work with those calculations we created. Let's see. I want to control click year, bring that under filters because eventually I'd like to look at it specific to year. So I'll keep it there for now. Only using all at the moment. And then I also want to bring in those other calculations I created. So World Series champ, bring that in there. Use all for now. And then season and division rank. I'm going to make that, let's see, all values next. Apply. I'll make that a discrete filter because I'm going to want to look at specific check certain ranks. Use all. Okay, so now we can actually play around with the data, right? We can look at specific teams. We can look at a specific season. We can look at only the World Series champs since 1957. We can look at those that ended the season at ranked 1, 2, 3. So let's play around with it a bit before we build a dashboard. We can use the highlight element here on the color legend. Arizona Diamondbacks. Look at that. Let's look at the Rangers. Texas. Look at that. Not sure I like the yellow, but it might make these lines pop out more if we format the background. So let's work with the shading a bit. I'm going to go to the sheet. We'll make this black. There we go. Better to view. Now we got some grid lines I want to get rid of. Let's see. Zero line, let's keep. Get rid of the grid lines. Get rid of the tick marks. It's looking good, guys. Look at that game number. I'm going to make that bold. Let's do it white. And let's make that bold. And then the run differential, we'll do the same format there. White, bold. A lot more cleaner. You can kind of see specifically against the black background the team you want. Now, let's see. I want to move this. I need to work with my data panes here and kind of understand what's going on. All right. So let's go and let's look at this filter. I'm going to show it real quick. There's my indicator. Yes, they won the World Series. No, for they didn't. So let's uncheck N for no, and look at only the ones that won the World Series. Okay. All right, did I uncheck it? I thought I did. I think my computer's still asleep. Like I should be asleep. But let's do a swipe. How about that? All right, so now we're back. It's looking at only the World Series champs. So really cool. You can kind of see the majority of the champs are talented teams. They're going to have a positive run differential. Way up here is the New York Yankees in 1998. One thing that's kind of peculiar to me is there is one World Series champ that had a negative run differential. Look at that. The 1987 Minnesota Twins. So I like using filters to kind of identify some peculiarities, some anomalies in the data, and then dig deeper into that. This is really cool. Okay, let's revert back to all. Now we can use that other filter. Let me show that. Show that filter. Now let's say I only want to look at those that ended their division tied for first, or tied for first, lone position at first. There you go. That's a better way to say it. Look at that. You still have some negative run differentials there for specific teams. And then let's say we do 5. I think currently each division has 5 teams, at the most 5. Notice how now you have a much more weighted run differential in the negatives, right? Pretty cool. Cool. Okay, so now we kind of have something to work with. You have your run differentials that are specific to every team, every year. We have some filters here to work with. So season and division rank, World Series champ. If I wanted to look at just to a specific year, let's say we want to look at last year. Dodgers up there at top, Yankees, Astros, Braves, Mets, very bottom, Nationals, Pirates, the Oakland A's, soon to be the Las Vegas A's, Colorado Rockies, the Royals, Reds. So it looks more cleaner. You can see by year. Obviously, if you're going to add all the years in there, it's going to be very crowded. So the year filter, I'm going to want to work with. The World Series champ indicator filter, I'm going to want to work with. And then the season and division rank filter, I'm going to want to work with. I think those are good to start off, to build our dashboard. And then we want to make sure that we have some type of filter specific to teams. Now you could just use this color filter here, right? And just start clicking on each team. But you want to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So the idea I had was, let's look at the actual team logos that we can get from MLB.com. So I will bring in an example of what that looks like. Check that out. So notice how all I did was I went to MLB.com, looked up current team logos, and I downloaded them. You downloaded them to my folder. I say on desktop, anywhere you want on your computer, and then you can put that specifically in a folder. And then you basically need to find your Tableau repository, which is just your kind of your sandbox that Tableau gives you. Find the shapes folder, put it in there, and then when you go to shapes here, all you gotta do is reload shapes and then assign them. That's all I did. So when you go to baseball, notice how all the logos are there. All I did was assign them to the team name. That's it. You're done, right? So now every logo here is specific to every team name. So I created one here for AL, by league, by division. I made this static to 23 because I only want to look at it from an active point of view. If I took the year 23 off, then you're going to have duplicates. You'll have an Oakland A's logo for Oakland, an Oakland A's logo for the Philadelphia Athletics. You would have a a Texas Rangers logo for Texas, another Rangers logo for Washington Nationals. So I want to make it look clean, make it look uniform. So that's why I filtered it for 23 only. So I did one for AL. I also did one for NL. There we go. So then when I'm able to build um, the dashboard, a few things I want to do. I want to bring in. Let's do a vertical. If I bring in it's working hard, guys. Okay, so let's take off this. I don't need that. Delete that container. I'm going to hide the title. All right, now I also want to bring in my team indicators. Remove the container. Bring in the NL indicator on the bottom. Hide the title. Hide. I'll have to work with the size of this real quick just to make sure all the logos make sense and can be viewable on the dashboard. And like I said, guys, this is pretty dirty build of a dashboard. Obviously, if this was a dashboard specific, formatting and whatnot type of episode, then we would go to the specifics of, finding a fixed size of the dashboard, fixing all the widths and all the heights of the containers. Cool. Look at that. So now let's add one dashboard action. This sheet. We're going to do a filter. These are the two sheets here that have both logos. I want it to control the actual visualization. And we'll do it specifically based off, I think it's team ID. We'll do team. I think that should work. So if I click on Rangers. Oh wait, I forgot that one. Look at that. See that menu option? I forgot to put it on select. Show all values when you clear the selection. All right. If I look at the Rangers, those are all the years right there. A max of 178, a minimum of 241. Let's look at a team. Let's look at the Mets. Pretty cool. So now you have a workable filter based on the logos. And then you can work around and play with the filters here. So what you'll need to do is I'm going to bring in the dashboard filter. Dashboard title. There's that. But I'm going to put it in a horizontal container. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm going to apply the filters that are on this sheet here I'm going to add them to the right of this title. So if I go to bring in filters, I right clicked on the sheet, went to filters. I want to bring in World Series champ. I want to bring in season end division rank. And I want to bring in year. So I'm going to make this a multiple value drop down so it'll clean it up, just show all. I'll do the same for this one. And the same for the year. And then I could just bring in, let's see, I'm trying to find, there it is. Boom. Year right there. And World Series champ. Maybe we resize this title here. Pretty clean, guys. So now we have a workable dashboard that we can play around with. We can click on an icon to look at a team specifically for all the years going back to 1957. We can look at a specific year in a specific season, basically. We can look at just World Series champs, what division rank was at the end of the year. Pretty clean dashboard, if you ask me. So, what I'll do on my end now is I'm going to go to my Tableau public profile. And that's exactly where I have the dashboard I worked on prior to recording this. So there's my profile here, my little cause profile pick. And then I can go to MLB Run Differential here. I did two versions of this. So I did one specifically for, when you're on the Tableau public site, you can play around with it. Looks a little bit more cleaner, a little bit more wider. It's a more of a, it's not more condensed as you saw when we were building it. And then I created one specific to my blog that I had embedded in the blog. It's a little bit more slimmer, cleaner, so that once it's embedded in the blog, you can play around with it just as the same as you would if you were here on the public website. It's pretty cool, and you can even work with it here. Let's say we want to look at the Baltimore Orioles. Pretty cool. Well, it looks clean. I like it. It's pleasing to the eyes. You can click on the icons. There's some dashboard actions. So let's do a recap of what we've done so far. We looked at the data set. We examined it. We assessed it. We cleaned it up a bit with some calculations. We created a game number calculation, a World Series champ calculation, a season end division rank calculation, of course, the very important run differential calculation that we plotted on this visual here. And then we did some simple kind of formatting, how to format containers in Tableau. Next episode we'll probably go through is maybe how do we put this into a story mode type dashboard and identify certain insights, certain peculiarities in the data, and then maybe we can add some annotations as to why that occurred. That one thing that I did see earlier was we had the Minnesota Twins winning the World Series in the 80s with a negative run differential. I thought that was really interesting to kind of examine that a little bit more. Look at maybe we look at teams in the same division and how they did. My hunch is that you'll have teams that are probably going to be around the vicinity of the negative mark as well. We can look at other things like the Rangers when they made the World Series. We look at that as well. So Next time we'll look at kind of how do we convert this dashboard into more of a story, and then identify certain insights or peculiarities in the data that we feel are notable to talk about, and then go page by page that way in building that. Another thing we can do off of this data as well is we want to be able to look at maybe we want to join this with other data, right? Other data statistics in baseball. We want to look at run differential, but also look at winning percentage, right? And we can plot that into a scatter plot, and then look at how correlated run differential is to winning percentage for each team. So that's something that we could probably look at later as well. I hope this was of some use to you guys. I hope you found some really good tips on how to plot things, how to use fixed calculations. Please feel free to comment on this video. Feel free to go to my blog, which is on the description of this video. Check